Hello, welcome to the 12th lesson of Funerary Archaeology free course. This course is meant to be an entry level about the matter. It's free, it's open for everyone. Please, if you want to join, ask the guys of Civic Cultural Heritage Group. You are still in time because every lesson will be recorded and new material will be added on Google Classroom on the page of the course. So if you want, you can still enroll in this course. This course is free and you can follow at your own pace, so don't be afraid at many times. If you prefer to follow the live streaming, you can. I suggest you to do so, so we can share comments and curiosity, question, answer, and so on. But if you prefer to follow at your own pace, you can do so. You can find everything on Google Classroom, the page of the course, and also the participation at this course will make you eligible of a free certificate of attendance of the course to use for your academical course or for your curriculum vitae, for your resume, or whatever you may like. So keep in touch, and if you have any question or curiosity or something that you don't know and don't understand very well, please let me know in the comments below or in Google Classroom. Thank you so much. I am Lucia. I am your tutor and teacher for this course, and I am a physical anthropologist from Italy, a bioarchaeologist from Italy. So this lesson is meant to be about a part of Aegean society. Today we will focus on Mycenaean society. It's a continuation of yesterday's lesson, so if you haven't, please check it out before starting this video. And of course, the main focus of that lesson will be all the information that we can retrieve from burial and from funerary customs. So it will be focused on this. So shall we begin? So, as we saw yesterday, in yesterday's lesson, the Mediterranean Sea, the Mediterranean and Aegean Sea basins were, during Bronze Age, the land in which many different civilizations arose, but especially during the Bronze Age, the Minoan and the Missenian civilization were the most prominent. By Minoan, we refer to the ancient civilization of Crete, and by Missenian, we refer to an ancient civilization who inhabit part of the Peloponnese and ancient Greece, many isles, and also in Crete. The Minoan civilization was for many years and decades the leader of the Mediterranean Sea. They were known in following a nearby population and society such as the Egyptian one, as traders, as sea traders, sea merchants, and also pirates. So they have the so-called thalassocracy, the power over the sea, and they were the leading one population, as we can see from the chart, from almost, if not even more, than 1,000 years. But that population was stopped abruptly during the middle, more or less, depending on the chronology, of the first millennium before Christ, by the eruption of the volcano in Thera, in that specific isle there. This is a satellite image from Thera. Nowadays is known under the name of Isle of Santorini. What remains are the residue of the isle and the part of the cone and entrance of the volcano. Following that specific and terrifying event, a new population arose, taking the leadership of the sea, and that was the one of the Missenian. In the mainland of Crete, of Greece, that specific time of Bronze Age was known under the name of Helladic, as I was saying yesterday. The Mycenaean society is placed into the late Helladic period, more or less, and is spread, as you can see from the chart, from Peloponnesian mainland Greece, the Isle of the Dodecanesus, and even in Crete, even to the some shores, some land there on this part of in Asia Minor, Near East, and this is a clear image, and they were known as world-based society. There are many frescoes and paintings of that time that testimonied as their specific warlike behavior. Their society was hierarchical, was based on a very rigid, structured pyramidal society. At the very bottom, it was a slavist society. There were slaves at the very bottom, and the top was ruled by a chief-like, king-like figure known as the Wanax, which was not only the chief of that city, of that specific state, but also it was a military chief. The main cities for the Mycenaean population and civilization were the city of Mycenae, Tyrus, and Pylos. The structure of their town, their cities, was one of a center of power, a palatial center of power and fortress. Their cities were all fortified by huge walls that surround them. One of the most known image of ancient Mycenae is the entry gate to the town, known under the name of the Lion Gate, probably a symbol of power. During the growth of the Mycenaean society, they specialized into many fields, into many craft and artwork, metallurgy, trade, commerce, and so on. So there were specific areas of field work dedicated to a specific field work into their town. Another specific area, as we can see here, was one of burials. So, starting from burials, as again, for many past society, we can regain a lot of information from burial and graves, because for many times and for many reasons, they were the only archaeological remain that was still kept untouched or full of many different sources. So, for the Mycenaean society, there were used during the time different types of tombs, but we can divide those type of tombs in 5 different types. The first one, more ancient one, that were from Middle Helladic, Middle Bronze ancestry and used, were the one of pit grave and cyst tomb. Also, they were used during that type, also the pithos, as I was mentioning yesterday, is the same for the Mycenaean and the Minoan society, jar burial, and all those type of burials were found inside the wall, so intramural, or on the external part of the wall, so extramural. The simplest of those type of burial is the pit grave. They were dug into the earth or soft rock, and they can have an oval, but mainly a rectangular shape. And sometimes they seems to have non-man-made roof. Sometimes that type of burial contained very few funerary offerings, and the deceased were usually buried in a contract position. The cyst tomb was very similar, but it was an evolved version of the pit grave, and they were rather small and have a box-like shape. Their walls are made of 4 stone slabs, and eventually a 5th stone slab served as a roof. Also, the roof was usually covered with pebble. This tomb contained only one body. It was placed in contract position and had only a few modest funerary offerings, as we can see here in picture. Another type of burial used during Mycenaean society, especially towards the the end of the late Helladic was the Tholos, and usually and sometimes the circular type, that specific circular type of interred burial was known and referred to into the literature to Beehive Tomb. It has many similarity, resemble another type that we will see later of tomb, which is the chamber tomb, because it has a section and it was cut and made into the rock of a hillside. It has, you can see better here, it has a dromos, which is a passage of entrance, a doorway, and a chamber, which sometimes have different side chambers and rooms. The difference between a chamber room and a tholos is the tholos in itself, which is the vault, the conical vault, that interior can resemble a beehive. Another distinction is its construction, which is usually an artificial roofing and blocks that made the perimeter of the chamber. Also, the tholos has an artificial mound of earth put in cover of the vault of the tholos. The tholos appear to have been constructed for the use of one royal individual each, and was not a family tomb. There was one of the most important tholoi, Aegean in Greece. It's the one of Desdra. His construction is typical. The floor had the plaster and featured 4 pits. Within those pits, 3 burials were unearthed. In the largest, 2 interments were recovered. One was a male, which was labeled the king, and the other was labeled the queen. The king was positioned in the northern part of the pit, and the queen laid to the south. In the eastern pit was found another body, which was identified as the young princess, and was placed into a bed of clay. The bodies had to be arranged in extended position, and there was a vast majority, a lavish, if you could say so, grave goods that were placed surrounding them. One of them was a large gold cup. We can see here the finest manufacture of maritime elements, sea snakes, octopus, and so on, waves, and another time. And in the inside of that cup was filled of jewelry, golden jewelry. There were found not terracotta vases, bucket clay vases, which is the most usually funerary grave goods. And we don't know that this burial happened simultaneously or are different types, because as we all know, one way of form of datation chronologically put a phase to burial to distinguish one from another is the one which based on the study of pottery analysis and differences. So another pit was found, and the third and fourth pits were thought to be sacrificial, because the third was filled with the burnt remains of funerary offering. That may suggest that those gifts were thrown into the fire as part of the ritual. And the fourth pit contained unburnt bones, animal bones, and human bones. And these were thought to be sacrificed, made for the king. Or it may be that these bones were simply earlier burials that were swept aside, as in the reduction practice. So the interments of the Desdra tomb suggest that the burial custom that were practiced here were very similar to the one of the chamber tombs, and so this is a difference of importance in the architecture of the grave. Another important and very famous Tumulus near Missenian is the one named the Treasury of Atreus. It is completely empty in the inside. You can see here a prospect, the planimetry, and was one of the biggest one, and even one of the latter. So another type of funerary burial was one of chamber tomb, as I was mentioning before. Chamber tombs were taught in juxtaposition of the tholoi, the graves meant for ordinary individuals, while the Tumulus tomb were taught to be the houses, the death houses of kings or the chief or any individual of power of the society. So they were very numerous, and they are basically placed underground. There are cave-like hollows that were cut horizontally. And again, they were cut horizontally into the slope of a hillside. As the Tumulus, they were composed of three distinct parts: a dromos, a stormium or a doorway. You can see we can use the same planimetry, same image for the Tumulus because the basic structure is the same. Entrance or stormium, which was the doorway that closed the entrance, the dromos, and the burial chamber. The dromos led to rectangular generally, rectangular doorway with an horizontal, a lintel and inward inclining sides, which made the opening narrower on top rather than the bottom, and so there is no base for the door. The earliest chamber tombs were short and wide, while the latter, their dromos tends to be long and narrow, and the chamber itself was oval, round, or rectangular. Some chambers, as we see yesterday for the Minoan culture, contain benches that were or built or carved directly in the rock. The space was very restricted. You can see some benches, so it made no time or didn't not allow for a ritual full or elaborate. And following the burial, the doorway will have been blocked by a wall, and so the dromos covered with soil. Chamber tombs in general seems to be family graves and were used during consistent time periods of times. And the bodies in the chamber tombs generally appear to have been placed in more or less extended position without any given importance to orientation. So here you can see some inhumation from chamber tombs. There were multiple burials, as I was mentioning before. And as we can see, the grave goods are very little, minimal. One which is different from the other is the chamber tomb from Desdra. Again, it's the same city of the Tumulus, and it was famous because one of those men inhumated was accompanied by its war clothes named panoplia in bronze and ivory, and this is the typical way Missenian warriors were armed up to defend their service, their body, and that found a way of found a significant correspondence into some wall paints of Near Eastern cities. Also, the Larnaces, as we said yesterday, the same one from the Minoan society, made out of terracotta, were used from the chamber tombs. This is probably something that the Missenian took from Minoan culture and society when they invaded the Isle. So the most known and most important type of burial from the Mycenaean society are the so-called shaft graves. When we think about Mycenaean, I think that each one of you known or have seen some images of the round circle types that were found during the digging excavation of the 19th century. They were very famous because Schliemann, self-made archaeologist, if we can call it so. It was only an amateur, which started the campaign, the digging campaign, used as reference ancient writings of ancient geographics, such as Pausania, the work of Pausania, but it based its work mainly on Homer, on the Iliad and Odyssey. So the circle graves were known also under the name of shaft graves. It's a form that it was a further development from the simple grave pit and schist tomb over the Middle Helladic period that we saw previously. And also, not only the change in architecture, but also other significant changes have happened in the deposition of wealth with the dead bodies. And so this is a change in funerary practice. The grave belonged to a later period compared to the pit and schist tomb. They are the late Helladic. The circle were divided in two, Circle A and Circle B. Circle A was located south of the Lion Gate. It was the first excavated in 1876 by Schliemann, who found out the first 5 shaft graves. So the shaft grave is nothing more, as you can see here and here, that an enlarged schist grave entered through the roof from a shaft several feet deep, which was dug from the contemporary ground surface. A shaft grave may be roofed, have timbers, reed twigs, or waterproofing clay, or simply by large flat slabs. After the inhumation, the burial was made. The shaft above the tomb roof was filled with earth, and the location of the tomb was marked by a rectangular outline of filled stone, the so-called by the ancient Greek name Sema or Semata. As here is another image from the chamber of the shaft grave. In general, there were found out 26 adult burial. The later burial of the circle grave A will be dated to the late Helladic first period. All the burials, apart one grave, were oriented in similar direction, independent of other graves. So the remodeling of that, because it was subjected of a remodeling of the grave circle A in the late Helladic period, 3B period, during the time when a new walls of the citadel of the city were made that surrounded the circle, indicate us that the individuals buried inside the circle were still revered many years after the burial site had fallen into the disuse. Prior to the reconstruction, such a way of respect the dead from long time diseases, had been largely not impaired to Missene. Usual practice had been the one of build over all their graves or rob them without restraint. That is allo tumuli, while the circle B was located on the outside of city walls and that preserved a greater number of burial. Circle B is earlier than circle A. And the content of the circle, the burials laid there were dated from the Middle Helladic to the Late Helladic. Fewer graves in the circle B were destroyed, in contradiction to circle A, and they have a more accurate in the number of interments. The burial practice happened to be a digging of a vertical shaft to the earth and rock, and the placement of the, as you can see here, of the dead within, in an extended or contract position. As the decomposition of the soft tissue and flesh progressed, gravity took its toll, so the bones moved from their respective sides. And placed around the body, they were the final gift and offering. Also, it was believed that a funerary rite and feast was held after the inhumation and the burial happened, and libation were poured to honor the deceased. The goblet used for libation were smashed, and the bones of animal of the funerary feast were thrown into the tomb itself, and a marker or a stele was placed on the top of the grave. That made us believe that Missenian believed in a concept of soul, probably similar to the idea of psyche found in Homer, the spirit that linger in the grave as long as the flesh exists. So while it was still in the grave, the deceased would be revered and honored, and that was attested by the offering and gift provided. While all the flesh had occurred and the body had turned into the pile of bones, the spirit was then believed to be released from its body and then in the outer world, and never to return into the world of the living. While the spirit was gone, the bones could have been swept aside with impunity or thrown out of the grave altogether. So also this led to a great controversy surrounding the existence of cult of the dead practiced in the grave circle on Missenian. And around the funerary altar, not visible in that reconstruction, of circle A. As we can see, the funerary architecture of both circles were similar, and so the funerary offering, both grave displayed an evidence of extended burial practice, which, as we say before, happened to start in the Middle Helladic. One unusual feature, which is particular to the shaft graves, as we can see later, which is just introduction, is the use of mask, golden mask, and electros mask, covering the faces of deceased, and they were uncovered, 5 in circle A and 1 in circle B. Also, the size of the shaft graves was so big that means an amount of manpower to construct, and so the preparation for that burial were indicative of a very high social statue of the deceased. It was found out that during some trial that 10 men needed 10 days to dig a shaft size of those of one of the grave in circle A. This large side of the shaft grave and the wealth deposited within, and also a case of a body that was mummified and bulbed, suggest that there was a time of experimentation and big wealth and richness of the Mycenaean society. In both of the circles were contained rich individuals, such as the poor, rich graves, and such as the poor ones, men and women, as well children. Circle A was considered convenient as a necropolis, a cemetery for the community living in the nearby, because it has a rock solid terrain. Circle B, which was placed on distance, suggests an attempt to establish a separate area for the deceased. The area between the two circles, even though it has been digged and excavated many times, show no evidence of graves of burial. The origin of the graves are problematic. And it was there were many different theories that were related to the origin of the shaft graves. Someone believed they were a tradition, and that came from the Tumulus, the Middle Bronze in general tumulus tradition of Europe were indicative of high deceased status. And many other theories suggested that it was a type of burial that derived from burial similar to this from the Near East. But the mainly one is the Duat of the Tumulus origin. As we can see, as I was mentioning before, inside the shaped grave there were an extended body, multiple burials. All the remains were pushed to the side. The grave was marked by the sema, slabs, rectangular stones and steel, which have some inscriptions, some relief sculpture, and the grave good of find in the grave circle were lavish. They express a huge variety of elements, of material. All the material and the elements were rich, and they came from different trades, different commercial trades. For example, we can see influence from all the area of the basin of the Mediterranean. There is amber, there is gold. Amber comes from the Baltic, gold, huge variety and quantity of gold that was found in the circle grave of Missenian, which are no precedent in the ancient Greek culture and history. That specific type of gold came from different origin. One of them is the Central Europe and Romania. And the weaponry, there were very numerous types of it. There were starting from the most common one, with a shorter and broader kind of a blade, from sword that they are more pointed, and they were decorated, and even some blades have an incision, richly decorated in gold, sheet, and ivory, silver, and other precious materials, such as the handle, as we can see here. Sometimes the handle were made of alabaster or marble, or even ivory. Also, there were common daggers and knives. Also, some of the dagger and the knives have some decoration, of some sort of paintings. And they were seen, colored in metals and they alloy. The scene happened to have hunting episodes or seen from nature that were very similar from Minoan art. And also there were even some spearheads. I don't know if I have a picture. But again, all of the weaponry was pretty much huge. There were found also some form of metal vases, gold, silver, bronze, in Minoan shape, but also they have a different type of influence from the central part of Anatolia, which is derived the form of the rita, the bull heads and the lion head rita, and also they were quite common in that type of vessel, which is a ritual vessel, drinking vessel, happen to have similarities to the Hittite art. The silver vases that we have, some of them here. They show a craftsmanship made from Minoan artisan. Also, they happen to have stone vases. They are again from Minoan types, and a very simple ware, which was the mainland ware, the most authentic type one. There were found out also many types of golden embellishment and jewelry, piece of jewelry, such as seals, rings, and as I was mentioning before, amber. Amber from the Baltic, which is far north, and was brought to Messene by a length and a complex exchange network, probably without the influence of Crete. And pottery, as I mentioned before, which is a mixture of the mainland and Minoan style and Minoizing, which is an imitation of Minoan. So this is a very, also another chapter is to the mask. This is a very mixture and vast amount of material, great good material, and that suggests that all those material were of showing wealth and luxurious and luxury, and they are intended to be object d'art rather than a corpus or types. And this was fit into a situation in which the industry were being established in the mainland without a strong previous tradition. So there was not another parallel into the Aegean, and that tells us that the shaft grave people that were buried there were people who had been part of a society, was wealthy, and have even good type of diet, because it was found out from the bones, even from the mask, that the deceased into the circle graves were bigger and more robust in structure compared to other people who lived into the Aegean society, into the Aegean area at that time. So, starting a little talk from the mask, there is no reference to the custom of burying a deceased with mask. It was not traces, not mentioning in Homer or any other classical author. The masks were made of gold plate, and they have a distinct facial feature. They have difference in the shape of facial features. I don't know, high or low forehead, thick or thin lips, crooked or long nose, but the eyes were usually shut. Once the mask differ from one another, Schliemann think that suggested that they represent a specific feature of the deceased. Also, the closed eyelid suggests death, and also the mask have a perforation on the earlobe, implies that they were fixed to an object in the grave, or they were placed on the face of the deceased through a string or a lace and were grabbed there. The deceased into the graves were, before putting the mask on them, were wrapped into a sort of shroud, and the masks were placed on top. Some masks have a trace of a black substance, so that means that probably they were some sort of glued into the head of the deceased. And there was also a case of a children buried in one of the tombs of Circle A, and the gold plated did not cover only the face but also the body. And the significance of this mask is that they suggested a sort of Minoan origin. Probably there were parallels in a tomb of Molkos, where the bandages were bound directly over the faces of the dead, and the thin layer of metal had perforation and have markings of the eyes. And these bandages mask also have appeared to be attached to the disease. In some way, some ornaments were fixed in the bodies found in the Missenian shaft graves, either glued or tied. The purpose of this mask is still unknown. They were not all made of gold. This one is for Circle B, is made of electron. And they did not accompany everybody. As I mentioned before, only certain body had it. And probably these masks were designed as a means to hide the corruption of the body, were used during the wake or prothesis, of some of the individuals, a very selected elite of the Missenian society, Probably princes. So, this was a long lesson. I hope that you are entertained by it, that you find it interesting. If you have any more questions, please let me know in the comment section under YouTube or in Google Classroom. We will see each other next week and have a good time. See you. Bye bye.